This is a video on leadership. Number one, leadership is this constant background noise. You find the word used dozens of times a day and in every presentation during the day, precisely in those organizations without any leadership. The more the word is used, the less of it is actually going on. Now, I measure directedness, which is actually the delivery of context for effective coordinated action to each and every part of a large workforce. And it is really precisely, I've started recently measuring the background noise use of the word leadership in organizations so I can get a paper showing the one-to-one correlation. The greater the use of the word leadership by a CEO and his cronies, the less directedness is actually being delivered to the workforce. It's really quite amazing. So, number one, leadership is a large background noise delivered by people who are not leading to create the semblance of leading, the feeling that people are being led. Number two, tools for leading from great leaders. Now, if you ask people, have you been greatly led by anything or anyone in your life, and you find some, I found 150, in 5 in each of 63 different professions, and then you ask them, well, what is it that led them and how that got achieved, you can find particular leadership tools, which I have in a course. Number three, neurotic great man monkeyisms. This is the primate dynamics that substitute for leading in what I call banana lands. Number four, performance. There are dimensions of performance. There is the getting my numbers. And the way this is done by everyone is by stealing stuff that is needed for future numbers in order to get present numbers. So numbers management simply means that the CEO has ordered everyone to destroy the future that the next CEO inherits for the sake of the present CEO's bonus. Then there's the performance of the organization in Europe and East Asia, where every stakeholder has value, not just the investor stakeholders. And this means how the employees value their jobs and how many such jobs there are. This means how the customers value the products and how high in quality they are compared to similar products around the world. This means how much of the production is domestic and foreign based on the needs of the society that the company is in and that the company moves to. So this is stakeholder performance per each stakeholder. Then there's show performance, the theater, the drama of that. It's not enough to do good things in a business. You have to be seen as doing good things. And so you have to have dual tactical systems, one for doing things that please all the stakeholders, and the other one is for being seen to be doing dramatic things for the stakeholders. Then there's the anthropological dimension and the theological dimension of performance, which is the fundamentals of deep motivation in human beings, which is we are all tiny, tiny little scared monkeys in a giant cosmos that any one of 21 different giant forces can wipe off all life off of the earth at any moment. And in that context, every next minute is precious and not automatic. And creating that theological ground of joy is what the great, great, great leader performers do. They turn the mundane into a heroic performance over the abyss of anxiety that humankind's existence each hour, each moment is. Number five, performance cultures. We are, and each company is, a sea of contending cultures inside a bigger sea of bigger contending cultures. And seeing the cultures inside and how they contend, and seeing the cultures around and how they contend with each other and with the cultures inside, is really how effective people get effective things done. Transplanting across cultures, transplanting leaders, particular men and women across cultures, and transplanting regimes of leadership across cultures. Number 6, leaders as solution cultures. In Anglo cultures, you have this implicit thing where the last guy was a fuck-up, and I'm going to fix everything he fucked up. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a particular style. It's called the solution culture style, where you implicitly define the prior regime, whatever it was, as a problem culture, and now you're going to fix. Now, to be fair, some of the new CEOs say that the things have changed, conditions have changed, and what looked like a success in the old regime looks dangerous and out of in the wrong direction now, and that they're quite often right about that. Total quality leading. This is actually what I do, which is using quality tools to measure how much directedness is delivered to each and every part of a workforce and a supply chain and a customer chain, and to measure how much of each of 64 basic leadership functions is being delivered when needed and in the amounts and types needed to each of the parts of a workforce. When you measure this, you find that average leaders and leadership regimes are delivering at the 3% directedness level, and that high-performance organizations are delivering at the 17% level. So there's a 6-fold improvement in directedness achieved by high-performance organizations over normal organizations. Total engagement leading. This is where you have employee engagement achieved via the prerequisite first step of executive engagement. There is no way to achieve employee engagement without executive engagement. In every case, the reason employees are not engaged is because executives are not engaged. And so anytime you hear a CEO talking about employee engagement but saying not a word about executive engagement, then you're dealing with a baboon. Leadership types. We have Pasteur, who found that mold growing that killed bacteria and changed the world. That's the most powerful form of leadership that we know. We have the Buddha, the founder of a religion with no God. That's the most powerful kind of religious figure that we know. We have Napoleon, a great man in history based on developing a new way of killing people faster and killing more people in more parts of the world than anybody before in history. This is the male hormone type of leader. Shakespeare. This is the enduring through errors of history. Somebody writes some words that are beautiful 400 or 500 years ago, and here we are all over the world, even in cultures with a different language, trying to appreciate the beauty of those words and those thoughts. The only kind of leadership that endures in history. And it endures beyond religions, believe it or not. Leadership foundations. This is a set of cultures you have to set up if you're going to lead. A culture of risk. A culture of investment. And a culture of high performance. These are very particular cultures. I have models of the 64 dynamics of each one. And you have to put them up roughly in that order. Leadership myths. This is the fake leadership mostly generated by Anglo cultures and mostly generated by East Coast U.S. parts of Anglo cultures, where you want to attribute things to individual heroic leaders because of the way everyone's so poorly educated and the poor kind of fathering that goes on there, and the dictatorial default nature of Anglo personalities and families. You have heroes, psychopaths, strutting monkeys, tyrants, as fathers in families, and then as bosses in workplaces. Because it's all about playing a heroic role to yourself. And then the follower monkeys vicariously enjoying you playing that strutting role. And it's nothing to do with actually delivering directedness to the workforce. Leadership functions. The way you find these is find 150 people, 5 in each of 63 professions who have been greatly led, and ask them where and how. And you find out when you group all that data together, you end up with 64 basic functions of leadership. And you can measure individually how many of them and what mix of them is being actually delivered as directedness to a global workforce. Leadership anthropology and theology was touched on earlier. This is what Baptist preachers and missionaries know about leadership, and they regularly do heroic acts of leadership in totally foreign cultures and climates that CEOs would dream of achieving. And how does the Baptist preacher and the missionary do that? Because they have this direct appeal to release people from the boundaries that enslave them from their own tribal origins and customs. And they have a second liberation from the theological liberation from the limits of the conditions of life itself. Everybody yearns for these two liberations, and only the Baptist preacher and the missionary directly deliver that. And other kinds of leaders can learn from that. Leadership interfaces. This is the most powerful form of leading that we know if you measure directedness actually delivered. That setting up powerful social interfaces of half a dozen different sorts will produce more increment in directedness faster than all of that personal speech making and hand around the shoulder persuading crap that Cialdini and all these stupid MBA professors talk about. Just-in-time leading. This is the Japanese ideal of the line-centered organization, and basically it's an ideal of if you can define a set of basic leadership functions, which I have elsewhere, then you can look at how well we deliver which ones and how much of each ones where needed. And you can look at alternative systems for delivery of those functions. And when you do that, you discover that Nordic Europe delivers those 64 basic functions enormously more than American and Anglo CEOs do. So Nordic Europe, with its tradition of everyone leads themselves, and we don't need some pompous monkey telling us, ordering and commanding us visibly to do the obvious, and sitting around in staff meetings where all we do is hear reports, the indirect content of which is, I'm a bigger monkey than all of you guys. That there are leadership regimes that achieve a remarkably more directedness than the Anglo tyrant father, tyrant boss, tyrant CEO. Leadership as culture building work. This is a strange thing of making more culture where there's less culture, making stronger culture where there's weak culture, making more balanced culture where there's imbalanced culture. And the fact that all of this means doing things in more feminine ways rather than masculine ways. So that more leadership always comes from making a workplace more feminine. It's not the same as you need females to lead, but it's just saying that a male or female who makes a workplace more feminine will create more directedness there than someone who makes it more masculine.